Cymra Hashiv, Smisha Andrew Grant McCunich. I'm Andrew Grant Mackenzie, I'm the Highland historian. And as I do almost every Burns night, I speak in favour of the massive poetic culture in Scotland, but particularly the Highlands of Scotland. So Robert Burns, the famous bard of Scotland, is a lowland bard, a Scots speaker, a poet of some quality, but he writes for the period. He is very much a period poet, late 1700s, and his songs are quite personal at times, a little bit like the blues music I write. Love songs, poems about things that have happened to him in his life. And he's a very interesting character, a very complex character as well. And you know, there are some pros and cons to his views on life and particularly women. Yeah, an interesting character overall. So it's probably right that there is a celebration of him. But every year I feel a bit of despair that around the world, Robert Burns becomes the focus of Scottish poetry, when there are so many more poets and so much deep poetic culture that can be missed. So it's not in it's not to be a negative towards Burns that I do this, but I just like to share some different pieces of poetry or poetic culture from around Scotland, but particularly the Highlands, on the 25th of January each year. And what I'd like to share today is a poem that is a bit like a praise poem. There are things called paragenic poems in the Highlands, which are wildly praising of the people, praising chiefs as being as grand as the mountains that they own, and as fluffy as the whitest cloud in the sky, and all these kind of silly synonyms. So it's not quite in that vein, but this is the praise for Caberfeidh, the Mackenzie chief, so Molech Caberfeidh, and it was written in 1716. And it's from this book, An Lasser, an anthology of 18th century Scottish Gaelic verse, which is edited by Ronald Black. And this is a fantastic collection of poetry, which really delves deep into the culture of poetry in the Highlands. So it's given in Gaelic and also with Ronald's translation into English. So I'll read it in English. But it also has, at the back of the book, lots of pages explaining the poem and how detailed it is. So it says here that this poem has a complex history, which may be summarised as follows. Originally conceived in 1716, it consists of a very fine tune and 3 elements: praise of William Mackenzie, or Uliam Dhu, the 5th Earl and Marquess of Seaforth, so he was the Mackenzie chief, a gathering of the clans of the type suggested in other poems, and a satirical account of the Alness affair of October 1715, in which a Whig force of 1,500 men under the Earl of Sutherland was dispersed without shedding of blood by a 3,000-strong Jacobite force under William Dhu. In a very different but incomplete version of the song, preserved in a different collection, Maclagan's collection, and published by Angus Matheson in Garum, the Gaelic collection of culture and poetry, there's a serious political critique which takes the place of the satire and of the Alness affair, and it appears that it may also be in response to a poem by Alistair MacVagsta Alistair, who is the famous Clandonald poet who wrote Diomaloch Caberfeidh, the dispraise of Caberfeidh. So presumably that one was written after. Sources on the authorship of the poem are very evenly split between the advocates of Murdoch Matheson of Kintail, who lived from 1670 to 1757, and he was the Seaforth family's poet, and Norman MacLeod, or Tormage Ban, from Loch Broomside. So presumably he would have lived at Inverloch and would have known that place very well, and he was a popular maker of songs. So I won't get into the detail of the poem because it is so lengthy, but this is an incredible poem which covers an awful lot of ground. So, in praise of Caberfae. Here's a toast to the deer's antlers, a cheerful and merry one, though they're far from their country. Son of God, speed them to their land. May I be hanged and crucified, and not enjoy my clothes, if I don't rejoice to see you rise. With the brave strength of all who are kin, I have seen you armed with guns, ready, prepared, and well equipped. Chasing Munros is your excellent pastime. You gave them their morning dip. Sutherland men performing no exploits. Their strength deserted them in fight. At seeing the deer's head on you, when your antlers rose over you. The Laird of Fowlis was a fool when he went to war with you. Munros and Roses, I presume it might also be Rosses. Silly old clowns they were. Frasers and Grants. In camp they wouldn't stop, and Forbes is fled in confusion to the old house of Culloden. They all fled there, did not wait. Even one man in 3 of them, the Earl of Sutherland, ran home. His pistols did not fire. Mackay of Plunders got away, calling for the fastest horse to make his retreat with, when your antlers rose over you. That's where there was terror, as we chased them over passes, south of us and north of us, fleeing fast from your headgear, like a bird flock from the bleak hills, with a scowl upon every man, descending from the mountain tops, to plains and to sea shores. They called a ferry, got a cobble, and took little credit from what happened. What bad thing had fired them up, when no spark could light their muskets, and so many Munro grandees were launched skull over heels? They took to retreat when your antlers rose over you. For me, to get my wishes, it's what woke me from my slumber. He to whom the elements submit, and whom everything obeys, must hurry you to your country with dignity and honour. You wouldn't leave to Lowlanders what did not belong to them. You would vanquish men of business, no matter who might tackle you. You put down the Clan Munro, though they thought it impudent, driving them in fearful rout, while Evanton went up in sparks, with flames rising to the skies when your antlers rose over you. I've seen you in the north, and what a mighty chief you were. Sutherlanders were in your care, while Caithnessmen paid you homage. And all who were at feud with you, and didn't wish to visit you, could expect to be scourged to a land they didn't own by splendid warriors of your kindred, who won't succumb to frightful panic, when the helmets, dirks, sharp daggers, your challengers could not repel them. Lovat's host will come to crush you, and they will run off timidly, and they'll flee from your forehead when your antlers rise over you. And if you've sailed the oceans with your swift cross-treed vessel, and with your retinue of gentlemen, being routed with cannons, you're the son of the Northern Earl, and to a host you a leader like, and you'll make an attack again that will disadvantage somebody when the Marquis comes home to us, with the fine men for serving him. Numerous horsemen will come to your conflict, staying with you over to Assant, who'd mount an attack upon their castle till every stone of it was knocked down. When a levy's raised by William, your antlers rise over you. You're sated with porridge, Monroes, and swollen with kale, but no warrior's the worse for it, for filling you up free, though you carried much cheese from the sheilings of Assant. I've seen no feast at Fowlis, though many were the chickens there. Pointy castle, nest of eagles, starving dogs and servants there. Not a stick is seen on fire there, unless there's a drop of porridge there. No beef is seen in any pot there, without a chicken to make gruel, and they're gathered in by begging, when the cost goes up too high for them. There's not a bird in the skies more offensive than the eagle. Her behaviour's not the same at all as that of deer in the mountains, though they get up early to try out the watercress. She'll be on top of an old starved horse, dragging out its entrails. She put a talon in his carcass, and with this paddle took his blood out, the wretched bird, in search of evil. All the dogs fight with her. She's a putrid chicken on the wing. Goodness knows where she'd land if she stuck to her habits. Where she slept was no better. There's no bird to be had in the world that resembles you. Your flesh can't be eaten. Scripture has cursed it, though your plumage is straight, like a true pointed arrow. And though they've called you the true bird, you have the devil's own talons. Many a herd on a cold mountain, armed with a cudgel of a stick, roundly curses your hue of his wife, and beats the bravery out of you, when you make a strike upon the lambs, and hunger drives you mad. When you come across deer's antlers, you must do what he commands. Donald's alder rafter. It is a joke in this land of theirs. Wouldn't you, Monroes, tell me so I'd know how to move it? And I'd send good information to George, the relation, that the tacksman of Dundonald fed him to keep him going. You're the beast with the least respect, honour, or wisdom that's ever frequented this land. 1/3 of your increase you've drunk and you've eaten. Aren't you the foolish chicken? The Monroes dispatched you upon an errand. Aren't you the ignorant blockhead? And though the Mackenzies gave you respect, you weren't worth 1/3 of it. So that's how it is, O world. How fickle and changeable you are. I have seen, O Seaforth, of the fierce-sounding pipes, that there was no tribe in Scotland, even if in bed with Macallion, who'd hold up their face to you when your antlers rose over you. They'd rise with you in right and justice, with 1/3 of your strength threateningly, all between Assant and the south, and away out to rocky Scalpay, each man seizing a firearm, a grey sword or little gun. Sir Donald of Slate would be with you when your antlers rose over you. The Moidart men would rise with you when your banners were unfurled. With their stained blue-black blades, they would wound the cavalry. McAllister and Mackinnon, with their efficient culverines. When they joined a battle, it's unlikely they wouldn't fight. You will once again be cheerful in battlemented Bran, with your father's kin attending you. Who would dare to threaten you? Wine will be drunk all over your house, and the whiskey of the still, and many pipes will be tuned when your antlers rise over you. So there's a lot of reference to a lot of dynasties in the Highlands of the time. MacDonald of Slate, of course, the MacDonalds of the Isles, the MacDonald chiefs. You've also got the Dundonald Mackenzies mentioned. There's a couple of names that they're not entirely sure who they were. For example, George was mentioned there. But there's also a lot of reference to the eagle being the crest badge of the Monroe clan, and referring to it as a chicken is incredibly offensive to the Monroes, of course. And the stag's antlers, which it continually comes back to the stag's antlers rising above you, is the emblem, the shield emblem, and also the banner emblem of the Mackenzie chiefs, Caba Fé, which means the stag's antlers. So I hope you enjoyed that. There we go. A little insight into some of the other poetic culture of the Highlands of Scotland.